insisted, and they were the most elegant, most comfortable way of traveling. So King John V decided to have these 3 enormous carriages made in Rome. They were made in that school founded by the king for artists. They were made there, and they were used also just once on the embassy to the Pope. So just to take the Portuguese ambassadors from Rome to the Vatican on an embassy with gifts to the Pope. The embassy took place in August 1715. After the embassy, the carriages were not needed in Rome anymore. They belonged to King John V. They put them in a boat, they sent them to Portugal. In Portugal, they were never used. For instance, behind you, you find a carriage that also belonged to King John V. It was in the beginning of the 18th century, over 250 years old and still so well preserved, because they kept using it and they were always preserving it, retouching it. But these were never used. They were kept in stables or warehouses, never being used. So as you see, they got very badly damaged. They are the worst preserved of the collection. But notice that it's still possible to see that the wood was covered or is covered with pure silk. The curtains are also made of silk, pure silk. And there are embroidered velvets, and inside there are brocades, which are still fairly well preserved. This one on the middle shows the step and the floor inside, all made of ivory. It's all ivory inlaid, this vehicle here. You can see, you cannot see it, but anyway, it's inside, it's all made of ivory. They started to restore them, you see, they are working on this carriage. You see the difference in the color. So far it was just washed, there were some experts here. We had that period later, some of them even belong one horse in front, one horse at the back, and of course the man sitting on the first horse. I told you that the last thing that they were able to improve was the suspension system, but we find in this room, on this row, carriages that already show what was the most perfect suspension system in those days. A system that shows springs. We don't find anymore the leather straps in front or at the rear, such as we find in the other carriages. On the second half of the 18th century, we start finding carriages with springs. Very thick leather straps, as you see, going under to fix the iron bars to the wheels. That also helped the traction. But later, they were able to make just one piece of iron that they put in the fire and then shrinked and helped to fix the wheels. Is a cabriolet. It's the French word, cabriolet. These small chariots were not used for races. They were not used to travel a long distance either. They were just used for entertainment. There's a series of these small chariots that were made late 18th century just to be used in the parks, in the farms of the royal summer palaces, just on summer palaces, to take a member of the royal family for a picnic or for a ride. So this is pulled or was pulled by one horse. The person sitting there used to ride the horse, and there was always a servant waiting outside. I mean, sitting at the back. So whenever they stopped for the picnic, or just, you know, whenever they wanted to stop, there was someone to take care of the horse, to take care of the carriage. But they were used for entertainment on summertime. Public transportation. Not everybody could afford to own a carriage because it was expensive, but some people could afford to hire a carriage. So in Lisbon, there were to be found vehicles similar to this one, used for the same purposes we use a taxi nowadays. This is an ancestor of our modern taxis, public transportation. Under the leather, we can see the contour of the seat of the coachman. So the man used to sit outside, exposed to the weather, but the customers sitting inside had the protection of the leather. This is one of the English vehicles, and there is another one at the main entrance. At the moment, there are just 2 English carriages. They date back to 1824, 1825, so to the first half of the 19th century. It was just in the beginning of the 19th century that English constructors became famous. So Portuguese royalty, noble families started to buy carriages in London. This one belonged to a Portuguese noble family, and it was the family, the descendants of the family, who made a gift of the carriage to the collection. The other one we find at the main entrance is much more decorated than this one. It belonged to King John VI. It was used throughout the 19th century by the Portuguese kings. It was repainted outside. It shows nowadays the initials of King Charles of Portugal, and the very for the first time to Portugal in 1957. She came on the royal yacht, the Britannia. She was brought ashore in a 19th century barge that we find in the Maritime Museum, and at Commerce Square there was that carriage pulled by 8 white horses to take the Queen around. I'm telling you this here because it's usually hotels are not very large hotels, although the new ones are bigger. And you can get from here a nice view of the bay, Cascais Bay. C-A-S-C-A-I-S. Together with the boats of the fishing fleet, we find some yachts. And there is other.
Here's the sidewalk. Really windy right here. If it was off shore, it'd be a big wave. Over there. Fish, I guess.
You know, I buy fish for him. His favorite fish is catfish. And I put up I can stand it. I don't
My son's at this morning, and he was like in 7th that year, which is one step away. It was on the south.
It's just,
They kept, you know, they raised it. They raised it.
Tennessee, I used to live in Missouri. I was born in Arkansas. I moved to Missouri when I was 8 years old. And
Yeah, how much windy it is.